All right, so today we're going to be talking about authentication, and if we have time, we'll talk about authorization also. So first question is, what is authentication and what is authorization? So the simple, non-helpful answer is they're two fancy big words that both begin with auth. That's that, again, really giving a definition to us. So let's actually break that down a little bit more precisely. So let's separate authentication and authorization. So again, they sound similar. They're kind of long words, but essentially they boil down to authentication is the process of validating credentials of a given user. So essentially that means, who are you? You know, if you're accessing a website, the server wants to know who actually you are so they can show you appropriate data, right? So if I go to Amazon.com and I log in, I should only be able to see my orders that I've placed in the system. I shouldn't be able to see everyone's orders out there, right? So this, you need to say, hey, I'm person XYZ, and the server's like, okay, assuming that you provide proper credentials, as in, you know, I log in with my email address and my password. The server validates, yep, you are who you say you are, and that's what authentication is all about. Authorization, on the other hand, is once you are, you know, authenticated. So if I log into Amazon.com, then it becomes, what permissions do I have granted to my user? So authorization is the process of validating permissions for a given user, or essentially, what are you allowed to do? So if I log in Amazon.com, I'm probably allowed to place orders. I could update my account info, but I probably can't, you know, update inventory of products on Amazon.com, right? That's not something that should be granted to me, my particular user for Amazon.com. But there might be other users out there, like, you know, an admin user. If they log into Amazon.com, they might, you know, have access to other pages that I, as a normal user, would not have access to. So that's where the whole permissioning or authorization concept comes into play. All right, so we're going to be mostly focusing on authentication, which is just the ability to log in and basically react based on authentication. Authorization is a little more involved, kind of granting different levels of permission so that different users can have different access to the same website. All right, so let's kind of go into creating a Django project and setting up authentication. To do that, I'm going to create a new project. So let me get to my sandbox here, cd lectures. All right, let's just code in here. Hopefully I don't have anything in here. Looks like I do. Let me delete all this good stuff. And all right, we're ready to go. So in here, I'm going to create a new Django project. So hopefully everyone's got enough practice with that so that these steps aren't unfamiliar to you, but happy to go over that together. So here, I'm going to create a new Django project. The very first thing that we always want to do is create a virtual environment. So I'm going to create a virtual environment via python-m v&v, and I tend to name mine .v&v. So that's what I'm going to name my virtual environment. All right, and then I need to get into that virtual environment. So step 2 is sourcing it. So if I do source the name of my virtual environment, bin activate, that should get me into my virtual environment. Notice that my prompt is prepended with that. So I'm actually in my virtual environment now. So, all right, next up, I want to actually install Django. So again, this is a case where we haven't provided you guys with a project ready. So there's no requirements.txt we can go off of. We're creating this from scratch. So let me pip install Django. And then also I'm going to be using a Postgres database. I'm going to install psycho-pg also, 2 also. So I'm going to do that both in one step and let that run. Should take a few seconds. Psycho-pg tends to take a little longer. Let's do its thing. All right, cool. So those have been installed. So now that I've done that, I want to do a pip freeze quickly so that I can kind of, you know, lock in those libraries in case, you know, I hand this project off to anyone else. I should have a requirements.txt file that is generated for my project. So I'm going to do pip freeze and then write that command out, or the result of that command out to requirements.txt. If I do that, I should get a requirements.txt file that has the libraries that I'm using for my project. All right, let me clear this. Let me quickly do a LSA. Yep, I do have a Git project here, so I'm going to remove that. That was a leftover from previous stuff I had here. Okay, so I have requirements.txt. Probably want to add in a git ignore file because I likely will be pushing this up to GitHub. So I want you to ignore my virtual environment. So I'm just going to do that now before I forget. And probably pi caches, we never want to upload those. All right, so have a git ignore in case I do create a Git project here. But all right, so those are my basic initialization items for my project. But now I could actually create a Django project here. So I'm going to do Django admin, and let's create a project name. So start projects, and my project I'm just going to call login_proj, just to make it clear that it's my project folder. I'm going to put a period so I don't have nested folders, and that should create a login project folder with a few files in it, settings.py, urls.py, and a couple others in here. All right, so I created my project. I also want to create an app that I'm going to use. So I'm going to do python manage.py and create an app. So let's do start app. And the name for this app, I'm just going to go with login_app. All right, so I have another folder that got created called login app. And that's my app folder. All right, so now that I've created my app folder, there's always two things that I want to do for my settings file. So I go to my settings.py in my project folder, scroll down a bit and get to a section called installed apps. Here, I want to add the app that I just created because that is the app that I'm going to be using. And then Django needs to know about it. So I'm going to call write in login_app, so that's my app name, in the list of installed apps. Again, you can put this at the bottom, you can put it at the top. I don't think it makes any difference as far as I know. There might be a subtle difference that we don't really encounter, but I usually put them at the bottom, but totally up to you where you want to put it. All right, so that's step one, add to our installed apps. Step two is to verify our database. So again, as by default, we use SQLite for Django projects, but I like to use Postgres. So I'm going to switch this to Postgres SQL. And then my database name that I've yet to create is going to be, let's call login_db. All right, so I'm going to save those changes in my settings. Given that I want to use a database called login_db, I should probably create it now. So I'm going to create that via my console here. So I'm going to do create db, and then the database name is login_db. All right, cool. Got no errors, so that database should have been created. All right, so my database is created, installed my Django project and app. So I think I'm good to go here. What else can I do? So if I try to run my server right now, if I do python manage.py run server, it should run, I would imagine. My port is already in use, so I probably have some other project running that is okay. I could specify a different port. Let's go with 8888. Hopefully that's on use. All right, so notice if you look at my console here, my server is running. So when you see this prompt, that means your server is running. However, I got this warning that I have 18 unapplied migrations. Again, Django by default has a bunch of migrations that I want to push to your database. So you should probably do that. Again, right now, it's not going to be a problem because we don't have our own models, but we should definitely do one migrate before we run our server. So I'm going to do that quickly here. We do python manage.py and migrate. That's going to push the default Django stuff that it just wants to add to our database. Again, we don't have models ourselves, so we didn't have to do make migrations for anything that we added because there's no models that we created at this point. But we do want to migrate some default Django stuff. So now if I run my server on port 8888, I don't have any errors or warnings. So that's good to see. All right, so at this point, our server's up. Let me bring up a browser so we could kind of access that. New window. I don't want that on the screen, so I'm going to toss it over here. And let's pull that up. All right, so if I go to localhost 888, I see this default page. So this is because I don't have any URL path set up. You should see this page just as your default Django page. Well, let's actually create some views and some URL paths that we can get to. So again, if you get this, it means your project has been set up correctly and that your web page is good to go, but we actually want to show something more interesting. So for that, I'm going to go to my project URLs and add some paths here. So let's get rid of these comments. And then let's add a path. So I'm going to call my base, it's going to be called my site, just for lack of creativity. And that's going to include my app URLs. So my app is named login_app, and .urls should access the URLs from that app folder. So that looks good. I need to include, of course. All right, so that's good to go. I'm going to copy this stuff and then go over to my app folder and create a new file called urls.py for my app folder, and kind of copy in similar items here. So my site is my base. So my homepage is going to be located at my site. So let's do that. Let's do views.index will be the handler for that, and the name of this path to be home. Get rid of this line. Always good to have an app name specified here. You don't have to, but since I'm going to be using some relative URL paths, I'm going to need that. So I'm going to call this login app for my app name here. Okay, so I'm going to be calling something called views.index. I need to include that good stuff here. So from login app, import views. And then if I go over to my views, I need to have an index. So let's do def index, takes in a request object. And right now, let's just write pass. Any questions on what we did here? Again, we've had a lot of practice setting up projects. So again, setting up URL paths and then having views handle the requests. Any questions about any of this?
Could you show the views again for a second?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So right now our index method is not doing anything. If you want to return something quickly, the easiest way I know is just do a Django.http include or import HTTP response. And then this, you could just return something to the user. Just do HTTP response and say, welcome to my homepage, for example. All right, so if I do that, and then I refresh my page here, my server's not up. So no module name login apps.url. Where did that happen? URLs, my site apps.url. Did I not set up my settings correctly? Let's see. Login app, that's correct. Let's try this again. Run server. All right, so not sure where that error came from, but let's refresh. All right, so notice there's nothing at our base URL, but Django tells us, hey, there's a /admin if you want to get to that, or /my site, which is the path I created for my application. So let's go to my site. And there we go. So this is our homepage, or this will be our homepage eventually. Right now, it's just that HTTP response that we're returning. So let's actually start rendering some objects, and we'll do that quickly because we've done this before. But if you guys have any questions or are going too fast, please stop me. So one thing I want to do is create a templates folder inside my app. I'm going to call that templates. Again, it has to be named templates because that's by default what Django looks for. Inside of that, I'm going to create a nested folder. This folder, you can call something else. Usually we go with the app name, but in this case, I'm just going to call it pages, which totally works. So another folder in there. And here, I'm going to create some files. Let's call it home.html. What else? We're going to have view.html. Again, these are generic names. You probably want to have better naming for actual websites. But I'm going to create 3 pages. Home is going to be my home page. View is just going to be some page where I'm going to show data to a user. And edit is going to be a page where it probably has a form eventually where the user can actually edit and submit data to my server. But for now, I'm just going to keep it super generic. I'm also going to create a base.html. I'm going to leverage using like a base template so that I don't have to keep kind of redoing the same style and structure for my pages. So here I'm going to use HTML base, get rid of this stuff for now, and create some blocks where I could insert data. So here I'm going to create a block, call it main content. And as always, I need to close my block off. So that's end block. And I'll fill that in with my other pages. And then I probably want to do something similar for my title. So each page can have a unique title. So let's call that page title. All right, so this is, again, a template. Let me get rid of this space here. This is just a template that I'm going to fill in with actual content from my other pages. So to do that, let's go to my homepage. At the very top for this, I need to extend my base template. So that's extends and the name of the template I want to extend. So that's base HTML in my case. And then here I want to give some definitions to those blocks. So we had page title as one of them. Block page title. Then we need to end block here. All right, any questions about using templates, please do ask. Let's call this homepage, and the content will be block main contents, because the name I gave it in my base template. And here we need to end block. Okay, so this content, let's just show an H1. Let's do an H2 that says homepage. Okay, so nothing too fancy here, just filling out our sections. Let's do the same for our view page. This can be view, and this is the view page. Likewise for our edit page, very similar. Display for now, edit, and this is our edit page. All right, so we created 3 templates. We need to actually be able to route to these templates. So let's go back to our URLs in our app folder and create some more paths. So we have index as one of our paths. Let's go with view. This will be view something. View something. And one more for editing. So again, this will probably be a form. If you can use your imagination, I'm not going to bother with that right now. So edit something. Okay, so those are our 3 paths. We have blank, which is our maps to our index, view maps to view something, and then edit maps to edit something. So let's create those quickly here. So we have view something as one of our handlers. So view something is what I called it. And then edit something with no typos, hopefully. All right, so instead of returning HTTP responses, I actually want to return those templates I created. So I'm going to do a render. The request object is the first parameter. Second parameter is the template name. So it's going to be pages, because that's the folder I went with, pages. And then slash, this is view.html. And then if we want to pass in data, we can pass in data here. But in this case, I don't have any data to pass in, so I'll just leave that as is. We'll copy this and do that for edit. So that's edit.html in this case. And then our homepage will be home.html. All right, I'm going to take the liberty to kind of add some styling quickly. So if you guys remember how to add CSS styling, let's go about doing that. So I must create a folder called static. Not a file, but a folder. All right, so within this static folder, which should be at the app level, you put your static files in here. So I'm going to create styles.css. That'll be my CSS file. As you might guess, let's create some styling quickly. Say margin equals 0, and padding equals 8 pixels. Also, I want to use a font, usually like Trebuchet. And then what else do we want to do here? Let's go with H. Go to my base. Let's add some content here. Let's get an H1, say my site. Okay, let's see how this looks. So save that. Let's see if this all works. Make sure we have no errors down here. Looks like everything's good. So I refresh this. All right, there we go. So we got my site. This is the home page. If we go to my site/view, notice this is the view page. I still have the same header because we're using the same base template. So I didn't have to redo that for each page. And then if I go to /edit, this is the edit page. What questions you guys have about anything we've done up until this point? Oh, I guess one thing I left off, I created a CSS file, but I didn't actually link it inside my base.html. So that's something I want to do here. So again, the syntax is a little different from when you want to link a CSS file using Django. So in this case, I need to load static first, and then similarly create a link tag. Link, it's going to be a style sheet. The href is going to be formatted as such. So you have quotes. Inside of that, you do open and close curly brackets with percent signs, static, and then the name of the static resource you want. So in this case, my static resource is styles.css. So again, Django by default is going to look for a static folder, and then look for statics.css in that folder. So it should be able to locate it if I save this and refresh. Hopefully my font changes. Did not. Static, load static, styles.css.
Don't you need a closing?
Yep, thank you. So I got my closing part. Link, static. Should be what I need. What am I missing here?
Do you need a slash at the end of that link tag?
I shouldn't need that. I think something's wrong with my, let's see. It's not finding static.styles.css, static.
Do you need the // to go outside the current directory?
Right here?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I should need that. Let's see, load static, that's done. Rel style sheet, that's done. href, static styles, let's do this. All right, let's kill our server and see if we can start again. Okay, so I'm not sure why the linking wasn't taking effect, but I restarted my server and now my font changed, which means it's using my style sheet. I want to add a little bit more styling just for fun. Let's add that. Go to my style sheet, get some practice with CSS. Let's go with let's figure out what to call this. So body nav. Body nav. And this, let's see, what do we got going on here? Let's do background color of black and color of 00 CCFF. Margin. Let's do body nav h1, margin 0. See how that looks. Okay, not quite what I want. My margin should be 0. Padding go away. Okay, looks a little better. Let's go with height here of 60 pixels. Let's use display flex, flow. Don't need this stuff right now, but I have something in mind, so let's go with that. How does that look? Okay, I want to actually center that vertically, so we use justify, we use align items center. Hopefully that should center this. There we go. Let's add some padding to our H1 here. So padding will be, I guess we got padding here. Let's go with 8 pixels. How does that look? All right, so this is my kind of header banner. Nothing too exciting right now, but all right, so if I go to a different page, let's go to view. Notice I have the same look, so that's the whole advantage of using using a base template. So I don't have to make changes to each of those template pages. I just do it to one file. Everything else looks good. All right, so that's set up. Let's actually move on to the actual points of interest here is the, having authentication. So right now, as a user, I can get to all these pages. I can get to the home page. I can get to the view page. I don't have to, really authenticate myself. So this is accessible to anyone who has access to this URL can view anything they want to. Let's say I actually want to protect myself. So let's say my view page should not be viewable by anyone. You had to actually log in to view it. How do we accomplish this via Django? So Django fortunately makes this easy. We don't have to reinvent the entire wheel. Django has this kind of baked into it. You don't have to install anything extra. By default, you can have authentication set up pretty quickly. So to do that, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to go to my URLs right here in my project and add a new path. So what path do I want to add? Actually, I'm going to do this in my app folder instead. So for my paths here, I'm going to add a couple more paths. So let's go with path. Let's say auth. And that should map to, all right, so by default, if you want to use accounts as a default, because Django uses that as a base path. So sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place here. By default, Django is going to look for something called accounts. So you need a path of accounts at your project URLs, and then include Django contrib auth URLs. This is on our curriculum page. So again, I usually forget it. You got to look it up sometimes. You want to include django.contrib.auth.urls. What this is going to do, if I go to the curriculum page, it provides you with a whole bunch of URLs already baked in. And by default, it's going to be account/login, account/logout, and a few others. Like you want to change your password. Again, basic functionality that you are probably familiar with when you log into a website or need to manage your account. All right, so that's what Django contribs auth URLs is providing you with. It's a bunch of pre-configured URLs so that you know how to write these one line by line into your project. Again, the default is accounts. You have to name it accounts by default. If you don't want to use accounts, then you have to set some other settings. So I'm actually going to go and use it in the way I like to use it. So I'm going to move this to my site and go to my app here. And here I'm going to create a new path. So that path is going to be my site/auth. And that's where I'm going to include my contribs.urls. Again, this is the non-default way to do it, but I do want to do this just because I don't like relying on Django's defaults all the time. So again, my path is going to be my site, and then that base for my site is going to be auth. All right, so all those URLs are going to be my site/auth/login or whatever. So I'm going to have /login/logout under my site/auth. All right, so keep that in mind. Again, there are also names for these routes. So login, logout, password change are the default names. Keep that in mind. We're going to use those shortly. All right, so now that I have this path here, if I go to, let's say, my site auth login, there it says template does not exist. So what Django has provided for us are the URLs, but we still need to create the templates for what we're trying to render. So if I go to, let's say, my templates folder, I'm going to add a new folder called registration. You must use the name registration. Again, this is just something Django related. Django is going to look for a folder called registration within your templates folder. If you name it something else, it will not work as you expect it to. So I'm going to call a folder registration, must be named that. And within that folder, I'm going to add a template called login.html because Django is going to look for a login.html by default. Again, this is stuff that's out of my control unless I want to customize it further. But in this case, I'm going to rely on login.html being called by Django. So here I'm going to do something similar to my pages here. Let's extend our base template for login. All right, this is going to be our login page. So again, by default, Django is going to render our login or use our login page and pass in some information to it. So it's pretty easy to get a login page up and running. So to do this, I'm going to create a form. And the method is going to be post. And then within this form, Django will automatically pass in a form, object to our web page. So we don't have to pass it ourselves. So if I have access to something called form, again, it's going to be named exactly form. I'm going to render that in my page. So I'm going to use as table. And then I need to nest that within a table since I'm using as table. All right, so again, this form object is automatically passed to this web page. I do not have to pass it myself. I just need to render it somehow. And we also need a button because we need to submit. So type submit, and our button will just say login. All right, I'm going to pause here. So if there's any questions on what I've done here, basically I'm filling in my base template with the content for my login page. So my login page is going to have a form. Maybe I want to say, login page here. All right, so let's actually see this now. So I created my template. Notice I did not have to add anything to my views for the login page. That's because Django is automatically doing it through the magic of Django contrib auth. All right, so it's going to look for something called login.html under a registration folder. Again, I'm going to reiterate this because it's important. It must be called registration, and it must be called login.html. All right, given that, if I go back to my web page and refresh, notice I have a login page. I didn't create these input fields. This is something that the form object already has in it. So now I have a login page, which will take in a username and a password and do all the login requirements for me. I do not have to validate the login request. Django will automatically do that for me. Let's try logging in. Let's do user1 and some password. Okay, forgot my CSRF token. That is my bad. That was not intentional, but a good example of always remember to have your CSRF token. CSRF token within percent curly braces. Let me go back. All right, let's try logging in, user1, something, whatever. Notice, so Django does the validation for you. So incorrect username and password. There's no user1 in my system. That's why I can't log in right now. All right, so I could add a user1 in a couple ways. One way would be through my admin panel. So let's do that the easy way. So where's my server here? All right, so if I need access to my admin panel, what's something I need to do? Let's see, who am I going to talk to recently? Let's go with Jack. Jack, what do I need to do to get access to my admin panel?
You need to create a super user.
Yep. Actually, I think you suggest that on Monday also, so I think should have called on someone else, but Jack knows.
Go to.
Yeah. Jack knows that we need a super user, which is correct. So I'm going to do python.manage.py create super user, one word. Not in my virtual environment, so I need to get into that. BNB, bin, activate. All right. So create super user. I'm going to go with admin. Don't care for email address, password admin. Yep, I don't care if it's insecure, unsecure. Let's go with that. All right, so I created my super user, so I should be able to log in to my admin panel. So let's go to that. Always got to remember my correct port. So that's 888. Okay, admin and password. All right, so one way I could create a user is just go to the default users here and create a user. So notice that admin is one user that's been created. So that was the super user that I just created. I can actually log in with admin here if I want to. So we go to admin, type in my password. Did I not refresh my page? My site /login. All right, so if I actually want to log in here, I could type in admin and admin, but I'm going to get an error. And I can tell you why I'm going to get an error. The reason is because I chose to have a different default path than using accounts. So if you look at our curriculum page, by default, we're going to use the accounts base, but I chose to go a different way. So if you went this route, you'll be good to go. But I went a little different route, so I need to make up for it, or at least tell Django, hey, I'm using something that's non-standard. So instead of using accounts, which is a default, I'm using my site /auth. I need to make sure I tell Django about this. So to do that, I'm going to go to my settings file in my project. So settings.py. In here, I'm going to go to the very bottom. You can add this, I think, pretty much anywhere, but bottom makes sense to me. I'm going to add in a few fields here. Again, this is all from reading documentation. So if you forget, or I forget also, just check out the Django documentation and it should point you in the right direction. But for now, I know I need a login _ URL, and that's going to be my app. So my app name is login _ app. Again, this is coming from the app name. If you remember over here, I provided an app name of login app. So that's login and then : and then the route name I want to go with. So in this case, the route name is login. So that's the login page. Also, while I'm here, I want to do a login redirects URL, and this is going to be my home page. So essentially what this is telling Django is, hey, the login page is located at this route, and then when the login is successful, redirect to the home page. All right, so if I save that, is my server running? My server is. Yep, server seems to be good. Let's actually try this out now. So if I go admin, login, notice I got to my home page now. So I'm actually logged in and I'm at my home page. But there's nothing telling me that I'm logged in right now. So let's actually add that so it's actually apparent. And we'll add to our knowledge here. So if I go back to my home page here, let's add some logic here so that if we're actually logged in, we should be able to see it. Let's add a paragraph. Let's say I'm going to add an if statement. If user is authenticated. Now your question might be, what is this user object? This is another auto magical thing that Django is passing to each of our web pages without us having to do so. Okay, so each page is going to have access to a user by default. There's a is authenticated method that's going to check, hey, have you actually logged in? If so, we'll write to the user. Let's say if they've logged in, hello user.username. Maybe something I glanced over, so that's probably something I should clarify. I'm gonna do a quick Google Django user model. So again, we're using the default user model. I didn't create my own user model. This user model has kind of the default stuff you'd expect. So this user model has a username, has a first name if you want to provide it, last name, email, and password. All right, so that's something, again, I did not create a user model. I'm just using the user model that Django provides, and that's good enough for my needs right now. So that's where a username is coming from. I'm doing user.username right here. That's going to be the username of that user. And let's say else if they're not logged in. So this is if user is authenticated, does not evaluate to true. I want to do something else. What do I want to do here? So let's just say you have not logged in. And then we need to end our else. So don't forget that. Easy to forget because we don't normally have to do in Python, but for if statements, for statements, we need to end our if statements. All right, so give them that. Let's save that, refresh. Notice we get hello admin because admin is my username, but actually let's log out. So to log out, I can go to my site auth/logout. This is again a default path that's already added by including django.contrib.auth.urls. So go to logout. All right, I'm logged out. So let's go back to our home page. Notice it says you have not logged in. Again, this is all being done by checking user is authenticated. This is nothing special I've created. This is something special to Django already providing for us. So user is passed in automatically to our web page. Is authenticated is a method on the user object that can check if it's been if you've logged in or not.
Could you do that logged out part again?
Yep. Yeah. So to clarify that logged out, if I go back to our curriculum page over here, again, these URLs are automatically provided to us by including Django contrib auth URLs. So I simply navigated to /logout. But again, just to highlight it, hopefully I'm not confusing anyone following along. I chose not to use accounts as my base path. So that's a default base path you can go with. My base path is my site /auth. And then I went to logout, and that's going to log out your current user. All right, so if I do that again, let's go to our login page. So my login page is my site auth/login. I could log in with a new user, but let's create a new user. So I'm gonna go back to my admin page, go to users. Let's create a new, oh, I got logged out here. We can go to users, let's add a new user. So I'm gonna click add user. First name will be user1. Password will be, let's go with Oscar1 yay. I'm gonna confirm that, Oscar1 yay. All right, save. All right, user1 got added. So let's actually try to log in with that user. And do user1. And then password with Oscar1 yay, login. What? That's not right. Wonder if it's caching my pages or something. User one, Oscar one, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's caching my pages. So for some reason, the CSR wasn't valid then. But yep, I logged in. So it says hello user one now. If I want to log out, I go back to auth/logout. And I'm logged out. So if I go back to my web page, homepage now, notice it says you have not logged in. What question?
So with the default, it would be account/login.
Yep. Whatever path you set up for your Django contrib auth is where you should navigate to. So in this case, my base path is my site/auth/whatever. That's what you want to go to. But yeah, if you use accounts, that'd be account/logout. That's coming from these routes right here. Again, you have access to password change/done. These are routes that exist, but you need to provide it templates still if you want to.
So would that also mean whenever you had to add the URL, I think under the project settings, you would have to do it if you followed the curriculum?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Where I think it was you went to your project settings and at the very bottom, you had to add like a redirect URL and then another URL. You wouldn't have to do that if you use the default accounts, correct? Or would you
Yes
still
and
have
no.
to do that?
You would not need to provide a login URL in that case, but you would need to provide a login redirect URL if you want to redirect to a default page after the user logs in. So if you did not provide this, let's actually see what happens. Let me delete this and I'm curious what will happen. So let's go back to our login page. Login. All right, let's try login. So user one and Oscar one. Okay. All right, so now it tries to go to your, I guess the default page it's trying to go to is accounts profile. So if you don't provide a redirect URL, it's going to try to go to this page that right now doesn't exist. So either I need to create account/profile or tell it where I want it to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So let me add that back in. So I want to go to my homepage, not to the standard place it's trying to go to, which is account/profile. I don't really care for that redirect. So I'll go back to my site. Okay, user one's logged in. I'm going to add a couple more things just so I could make my life a little easier. So let's go to my base URL. Where are you? Right here. Here I want to add some more stuff. So let's go with the div. My site, another div. And let's add similar logic there. Homepage. All right, if you're logged in, let's remove this from my homepage so I don't have it in two places. Save that, body nav, flexible row, justify content, space between. All right, let's see if this works. Not sure if my CSS is up to par. Refresh. All right, so I got hello user one in my header. So now if I go to any page, I know that's not quite what I wanted. How do I space these out? Let's do it. All right, there we go. So I have hello user one at the very end here. If I wasn't logged in, I should see log out. All right, go back to my homepage. All right, so notice I'm putting that in my header now. So that each page I go to, so if I go to /view, I get same thing, the view page. So each page can show me if I'm logged in or not. That was my main goal there. So let's actually log in one more time. I know I'm doing this quite often. /login, user one. And what was my password? Oscar1. All right, so hello user one. If I go to any other page, it should show the same thing because I'm using the same header. Go to /view and /edit. All right, so I've accomplished, I guess, login, but key thing here is I still have access to these pages, right? So even if I'm not logged in, I can still get to my view page. So let me log out one more time. I feel like I'm doing this too often, but I go to my view page. Notice I still have access to this page, regardless if I'm logged in or not. Like I know if I'm logged in or not, but I still provide the content. How can I prevent my website from, I guess, even showing this page to my user, because let's say it's private information or something that I want users to log in for. How do I actually prevent users from seeing this? So again, Django has an answer to that, makes it very easy. If I go to my views, let me go to my views here. You need to include a few items. So I'm going to do from Django, what is it? Contrib .auth/.decorators. I don't think that's right. Let's see what the curriculum page has. Login. Have it. All right, don't think it's there. Okay, so I was on the right track. It's decorators. You want to import something called login required. This is a decorator you can use for your methods. So what I'm going to, we haven't talked about decorators too much in detail, so apologies if there's some confusion there, but just for now, kind of follow the syntax I'm going with. You import login required from Django contrib auth decorators. Now I'm going to use the @ symbol and use the login required decorator. What this is essentially doing is wrapping this function and it's going to do some additional logic to it. This login required, I guess, decorator or function is going to actually check if the user's logged in. If it is, it's going to proceed to call view something for me. If the user is not logged in, it's actually going to do something different. It's going to redirect us to a login page. So this is kind of magic baked in to this login required function. So if I want to see this in play, I'm going to hit save. My server should refresh, which it did. Let's actually try going back to this page. So I'm going to refresh this page. Notice I was directed to the login page. So maybe that wasn't clear. Let me try to do this more manually. If I go to my site/view, again, I have that view page. I'm going to hit enter and I'm taken back to my login page. I can't access that view page right now because I'm not logged in. Notice the URL, if you can kind of see up here, there's a next value. So once I log in, it's going to redirect me to my site/view, I believe. So let's try logging in now. If we go to user 1 and type in my super secret password, go to login. Notice I'm on my view page now because I'm logged in as user 1. So I could get to this freely now. You know, if I go back to my homepage, I have access to my homepage because that's not protected. Again, anyone can access my homepage, but my view page is protected in the sense that you must log in to view that page. So now that I'm logged in, I could go to my site/view and I have access to it. But if I logged out, so I'll log out one more time. We've done this a bunch of times, I know. I log out. Let's try going back to my site/view. Oh, I'm digging to my login page because I'm not logged in. All right, so just to go over that one more time, I imported this login required from Django contrib auth decorators, and all I did was add @login required to this method, and now no one is allowed to access view something or the page @view something unless they are logged in. But my edit page is unprotected right now, so I still should be able to get to my edit page regardless if I'm logged in or not. So I'm not logged in. Let's go to my site/edit. And yep, I still have access to this page. But if I add this login required decorator to that route also, now if I refresh this page, I should be taken to my login page because I'm not logged in. So I'm going to refresh. Yep, now I'm taken to my login page. And this is Django making it very easy to add this functionality without me having to, check manually. Hey, are you logged in? All right, you're not logged in. Let me redirect you manually. Login required and does that hard work for you. What questions do you guys have about the login mechanism we've set up here?
I have like an off-topic question about it.
Go for it.
So I guess the standard default of the login, is that fairly secure, or would you want to do more to it to make it more secure?
What do you mean by secure, adding secure?
Like I guess pretty much you could just do login required and you don't really have to add any more logic to it.
Correct.
To make it secure. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Again, the redirect is automatically handled for you. So, the user will not be able to get to the target page unless they're actually logged in. Again, you can do this yourself. You're not forced to use login required. You can check yourself if you want to. But again, it's definitely easier just to use what Django provides. All right. So that more or less takes care of all the authentication business we need. So again, we can create users. Let's go through one more thing and we'll take a break. So we have the ability to log in. what if I'm a new user to the site and I need to create a new like sign up, right? We're not going to grant our user access to our admin page because that's, you know, a lot too much power. So let's actually create a sign up page. So we can do that by adding a new URL. So I go back to my app URLs. Let me add one more path and just keep it consistent. I'm going to keep it off and create a new route called sign up. Again, this is not a URL that's provided in Django contrib auth URLs. It's something I'm creating. So I'm going to be auth sign up. The name of this route is going to be sign up. And then I'm going to create a view for this. So let's go to views. I think our curriculum page has a way to do this. So I'm going to look at that. Let's see what they're doing here. So look for sign up. All right, so what we need to do is we're going to use a class-based view. This is something we haven't covered, but I'm just going to copy and paste for now. Essentially, we're creating a class from a generic view, and we're specifying how to render it. And then when we use sign up as view, it'll convert this class into a view. So I'm going to copy what I have here. So it's views.signup as view. Again, we're using class-based views here. Normally, we just use methods to handle our views, but in this case, we're doing something a little different. So I'm going to copy and paste what we have here. Copy all that. Go to my views and paste this in here. All right, so we're using a class-based view here. We're importing a bunch of items. So we're importing user creation form. That's just going to be a default form that we don't have to manually create. It's just a default sign-up form. Reverse lazy is just a method to redirect to a page after you successfully submit from the sign-up page. And then also this generic from views gives us access to this create view. So that lets us use a generic view and kind of add functionality on top of it. All right, so we're inheriting.
Can you remove the terminal so I can see both the top and bottom?
Sure. Again, this is from our curriculum page. So I did a straight up copy and paste. So we're going to do registration / sign up. We want to redirect to the login page after success. And then we're using something called user creation form. And this is a pre-designed form that we're leveraging so that we know how to create a form ourselves. Makes it kind of easier. So if we do this, we need to create our template here. So I'm going to create a signup.html. And here it's going to be very similar to my login page. So I'm just going to copy this, go to my sign up, paste that, change a few things. So sign up page, sign up page, and then the form will be the same. The button should say sign up, probably not login. All right, I'm going to save that. Assuming everything's hooked up correctly, again, looking at my URLs, have auth.signup as my route. And the view that handles that is my class-based view. Yeah, we've not talked about class-based views too much, but essentially we're inheriting from a base view, in this case, create view, and then we're adding functionality on top of it. All right, so if I go save that, hopefully my server is fine. Yep, looks good. Let's go to, instead of going to auth login, I'm going to go to auth sign up. All right, so notice this is the form that got rendered. I didn't create this form. This is the default style of it. Gives you some information. You need at least less than 150 characters, some password requirements that you need to follow. So let's create user 2. Let's create a password. Again, this isn't rendered the best. This is the password field here. We'll go with Oscar2 yay, and then Oscar. Let's actually do a bad password. So let's just do a password that's four characters long. Let's see what happens. Sign up. Notice we get an error. So we got password is too short, password too common. Let's create a legit password. So again, Django does the validation for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. Oscar2 yay, Oscar2 yay. All right, assuming I have a valid password, valid username, I'm gonna hit sign up. All right, so reverse match my site off. Sign up does not work. Login not found. All right, that is because I screwed something up. What did I screw up? I go back to my settings file. Where are you? Settings. Settings. Login URL. Login app.url. That should be good. Oh, I see. If I go back to my, where was it? my views, I think I know where I screwed up. For the views here, I need to provide it the actual route name that I have. So that's going to be login app :login. So that's the route name, the app name, and the path name. So if I do that, go back. All right, let's do this again. Looks like that user got created already. So let's do user 3. Oscar 3 yay, Oscar 3 yay, sign up. All right, cool. So I got taken to my login page because reverse lazy is basically on success. Where do you want to go to? And I said, go to my login page. So now if I log in as user 3, I should be able to log in. User 3, password was Oscar 3 yay, login. And there we go. We're logged in as user 3. All right, so we created a login page, we created a sign up page so that, we have the base functionality for logging in as you would expect for any site. Also, we have protected views, so we get to view, and that's fine because we're logged in. If we're not logged in, we should be unable to view the view page or the edit page. What questions you guys have about creating a login page, creating a sign up page, or protecting our pages so that you force a user to log in before you render it?
So for the sign up page,
For the sign up page, I did 3 things, if I counted correctly. I created a new route. In this case, I maintained my auth/sign up. I guess I maintained the auth base path, but I didn't have to. Like, I can call this whatever if I want. But in this case, I want to kind of make it standard. So I have auth/sign up as my route. And then I use this class-based view to render that route path. So if I go to my views, so part 1, I added a new path. Part 2, I went to my views and added this blob here. It's a class-based view that inherits from create view and specifies what form to use, where to redirect, and the HTML template we want to use. So I had to create, the third thing I had to do was create an HTML template. Under registration, I created a sign up page that simply takes in a form object. Again, this is automatically passed to our view here, so I didn't have to manually pass that. We just render that form, and again, this is pretty standard. We just have a form that posts something, remember your CSR token, and then you render the form that the user fills in. Don't forget to add your button so the user can actually hit submit something, and then given your view and given your path, you should be able to sign up a user via the sign up page.
So didn't we have something really similar to the sign up page before that used the form?
Yeah, so I think in the past, we probably created our own login page or sign up page. Here, we're doing it through Django. So again, when I hit sign up, I'm not actually saving a user to a database. Django's taking care of that for me, right? There's nothing I wrote in my views that says, hey, take the take the information the user submitted, validate it, and then save it to a database. That's something Django's doing automatically, so that it's kind of just easier for us to do using Django's tools.
I mean, didn't you copy the login.html and change something to make it signup.html?
What do you mean by that?
It looks like they're about the same.
Oh, you mean the HTML templates?
Yeah. Where did you get the code from it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so I created my login.html and my signup.html. You are right. These are both very similar. They're just taking a form, rendering it, and have a button. So both these are very similar. So I could probably condense these if I wanted to, and just render it conditionally, either sign up or login in that case. So I could add some more logic to these pages so that I only have 1 template instead of 2. You're right. That's something I could definitely change here. But in this case,
I was just trying to copy down the code, and I needed to figure out where to copy paste from.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I definitely copied my login page and just changed a couple items. I changed the title and the header and the button name. So yeah, I think I would probably condense that into 1 template because they're essentially the same thing.
Okay.
Yep. But all right, so that handles.
I've got a question.
Yep, go for it.
It just in light of this, is it possible to extend a template where you have a base and then you have your kind of parent login, then you have like different flavors of login where you each extend it down. Is that a thing?
Yep. You can extend. I could extend this page if I want to. So if I extended login page, I could do that. Let's try doing that quickly, just to see it. So if I do login here, and now this is going to override it. Let's actually not override title. So I'm going to change that. Let's see if this works. So let's go back to sign up. Template does not exist. That's not. Extends login. Do I need to do pages/login? Nope. All right, I might have to backtrack on that. It is possible.
No worries. Yeah, like I wasn't expecting a demo of it. I was just kind of curious if that was a line of reasoning worth pursuing, and I'll do it on.
Yeah, so you might not have just one base. You might have intermediate bases. That is possible. Because I definitely have done it before, but it doesn't seem to like using login.html because I'm not sure why. Registration. Oops. I'll give this one try and then we'll take a break. So I just think I need to find that correct page. So registration.
Take the S out.
Registration. All right, so let's see if this works. Refresh. All right, there we go. So notice that my tab is login page because I did not override the title here. So that's taking the title from my login page. But my sign up page decided to overwrites the main content block. So instead of showing the main content from the login page, it replaces that with this. So the sign up page says sign up page, but my tab is the login page. So yeah, it is possible to override, multiple levels. You just gotta make sure you extend the correct way. So find the correct page, and then you should be able to do it. Yep, good question.
Super cool.
Good suggestion there. But in this case, I'll just go back to base. What's any questions, or should we take a break? Because I think we'll be going at it for a while. Yeah, let's just take a break. If you guys have any questions, we'll tackle that after break. So it's 11:13 here. Let's take 11:14 now. Let's take a 8-minute break. So we'll be back at 11:22, and we'll continue on with. So we handle the authentication part. We want to do authorization. So we want to have permission-based items. How do we go about doing that? All right, see you guys in 8 minutes. All right, guys. So we accomplished our main task of authentication. I get those confused. Authentication, where we added the ability to log in and sign up a user so that we can actually control what we show to our users. But within that, once they're logged in, there's no distinction we're making right now. Like anyone that's logged in has the same ability to access whatever we want them to. So we're logging in as user 3. If I go to my site/view, notice I have access to the view page and the edit page, right? Let's actually break this down further. And this is where authorization comes into play. So let's say I have 2 users. The users I'm going to go with are user 1 and user 3. Let's say user 1 should have the ability to edit something on our site. So our user 1 should have access to my site/edit. However, I don't want user 3 to have access. Sorry, I don't know if I messed this up. User 1 should be able to edit. User 3 should not be able to edit. They both should be able to view the view page, right? So only one of them should have edit terms, right? Both of them should be able to access this, but user 3, I want to block them from viewing this edit page. And that's gonna be done via permissioning. So let's actually talk about how we go about doing that. And part of that is if I go back to my admin page, 888, log in quickly, admin. All right, notice there's something called groups. This is where permissioning comes into play. So if I click on groups, there's nothing here because we're not adding any groups. If you read Django documentation, there's 2 ways you can add permissions. There's direct permissions and there's also groups. The normal way you want to do it is via groups. And what I mean by groups is you add a user to a group and then you give that group permissions. This is better than just adding a permission directly to a user because let's say you want to create roles. Like your one role might be admin, one role might be editors, but not admin levels. So admins have access to the admin panel. Editors should not have access to the admin panel, but they should have ability to edit content. So get to our edit page. So that should be a role that you create. Or when I say role, I mean group. So role and group interchangeable. You want to create a group called editors, and that group, everyone in that group should have the same permissions. that's better than, I see Jack in my screen, so I'm gonna use Jack's example. If Jack's a user and I'm a user, we each have permissions to edit. That's not gonna be as, I guess, as robust. So let's say we need to add a new permission where editors can also delete data. Well, then I'm gonna have to go to Jack's user and add the delete perm to his user, and then also go to my user and add a delete perm to my user. And then if we have 1,000 other users that can also edit and need to delete, we gotta do that one by one, add the delete perm to each user. That's not really flexible. That's why groups are better, so that if Jack is a member of the editors group, I'm a member of the editors group, and whatever the other 1,000 users that we might have are members of the same group, all we need to do in that case is add the ability for the editors group to have the delete permission. So we add the permission to the group so that every user tied to that group gets the same permission. Does that make sense? I know I kind of was dropping a lot of terminology there. So we have users, we have permissions, and we have groups. You can tie permissions directly to a user, and there are use cases for that. Those are usually one-off cases. For example, if we have 1,000 editors, that's part of the editors group, but me as a special user should be the only one to have a delete permission, I might assign it directly to my user, as opposed to all the editors getting delete permission. But normally you want to add permissions to groups so that everyone gets that permission, if it makes sense in that case. Sorry, was there a question there?
Yeah, so can a user be a part of multiple groups?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a user can have multiple roles. They could be part of I could be part of the normal users group, part of the editors group, and part of the admin group if I wanted to, if I wanted those distinctions. So, yep, you can have multiple groups assigned for multiple users, or one user can be part of multiple groups. So it is a many-to-many relationship if you guys are going back to your, data modeling hats there. All right, so let's actually try to accomplish this via Django. So I'm gonna give this a try and see what roadblocks we get into. I'm gonna close all my tabs because I have too many open and that makes it a bit anxious. So let's close all these. And I'm gonna create a new file. This can be done multiple ways. I'm gonna do it through my preferred way of just running my code through the shell. So I'm gonna create a new file. I'm gonna call it perms.py. Let's call it perms runner. You can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna move that to the base level. So it's gonna sit next to my manage.py because I'm gonna run it through the shell. And here I'm gonna do my Python writing, I guess. So here I'm gonna import from Django contrib.auth models import user. So remember that user model that we're using, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from Django contrib auth.models. There's this user object. So, we have the sign up page. If I can go back to that, auth/signup. So this is one way we could add new users to our system. This is where our clients or customers will actually use the sign up page. We also can use our admin panel to add users, right? We added admin user 1, user 2, user 3. We could do that through, our shell also. So if I wanted to create a new user, I could do user, let's call it u, and create a new user. So here, I could do username equals uncreatedly user 4. The key thing I want to highlight here, the reason I'm doing it through here instead of doing it through my admin panel or the signup page, is because there's another layer that you gotta be wary about. So let's actually, password. So there's gonna be an issue here. This is not gonna work the way you expect it to. The reason being is that passwords in Django's database are not stored as clear text, meaning if I looked at the database table, I'm not gonna actually see the passwords for my users, and that's for security purposes. So like if someone hacks our database, they won't actually see the passwords. They'll see the encrypted or the hashed passwords instead of the actual passwords. Now, if we actually want to investigate our table, we can. So I have a plugin for Postgres databases. I forget the name of the plugin, so I'll have to look that up. But I'm going to inspect my database that I have here. So login DB, I'm going to go to that, see all the tables. So these are all the tables that exist that Django created. There's one called auth users. That's the user model table that's being used right now. So I'm going to do a select all values in there. Let's take a look at this table output. Notice that these passwords are not what I typed in. Like this is not the actual password for user 2, right? It's a hashed version of it. So if I look at my user, so I have user 1, 2, 3, and admin. So there's a super user Boolean. So my admin user has that super user Boolean. Again, there's some other values here. There's another role. So I think we're talking about different roles someone can have. There's a is staff role that is, I think, a step below admin. There's also other values like date joined. Anyway, the main thing I want to highlight is the password. Notice that these aren't the actual passwords that we typed. These are hashed versions. So if I go back to my script file I was running here, I can't simply assign the password because that's not what I want to save to the database. So instead, you need to use a method called set password and then pass the clear text password in there. All right, so this is an easy mistake to make. If you sign up a user like, hey, I can't log in. Why is my password not working? Usually it's because you didn't use the set password method. This method will take in a clear text value, use the appropriate hashing method, and then save the hash password on the user. So if I do this save, this should save the correct password. Again, if you don't use set password, you're not gonna be able to log in with this user. All right, so this will create a new user. Let's create some permissions. So if I want to create permissions, I need to include that model. Permission, there's also group, and there's something called content type, which I don't have a clear understanding on it, but it's just something you gotta deal with. All right, so this is create new user. Let's create a permission. So let's do create new permission. All right, here we're gonna need something called content type. Again, I need to read up more on this, so apologies if I'm unable to do so, but I wanna get from model. So let's get from model. Content type objects that get from model and the user model. All right, so that will be used shortly. I'm going to create a permission. I'm going to call that P, and let's make a permission object. Again,
I
you gotta
thought
look
you
at
said get from model.
Oh, sorry, it's get for model. But yeah, again, I'm not super clear on why this content type is required. I'm not actually using this user model, but it's just something you got to create. There should be a way to create a permission without a content type. I haven't figured it out, but probably there's some way. But for now, I'm going to go with this content type that I'll use shortly. So for your permission object, you got to specify 3 items. One is a name. So let's do P1, that name. This is the human readable name you're going to give it. So in this case, you could call it pretty much anything you want. I'm going to call this, let's say, my edit firm. Then there's also a value called code name. This is your code representation of your permission. So this has to be valid Python variable naming. So you can't use spaces for that naming. So in this case, I'll call it my edit perm underscores. So this is my variable name, code name. So if I'm trying to access permission via code, I'm going to specify my edit perm. Otherwise, like for display purposes, this is what the dot name is what will be used. So I have that, and then I need to specify content type. So p.content type equals the content type that I created before. And I'm going to save that to a database. Right. So this is creating a new permission. We can also create a new group. So I'm going to create a new group here. New group. G equals group. The group needs a name. So that name will be, let's just say editors, since that's what I was going with before. Editors, and then what else do I need here? I want to give this group permissions. The important thing is, or the key thing to remember is you must save the group before you add permissions to it. The reason is because groups and permissions have a many-to-many relationship, so that's a separate table. So you need to save your group to the database first. So I'm going to do a g.save, and now I'm going to do g.permissions.add. I'm going to add this permission I created above here, right? So I saved a permission to the database. I saved a group to the database, and now this is going to be a many-to-many relationship where a group can have many permissions, or one permission can be used across many different groups. Again, so this is a separate table that's going to be created, or this data is going to be stored in a separate table. So that's why I had.
Sorry, I got a question. Did you import that group class?
Yep, that's all coming from auth.models. Yep,
Awesome.
I kind of
Thank
think we did that, but user, permission, group, and content type all are coming from auth models. All right, so I'm using the built-in permission object, built-in group model. It's not something I've created myself. So this group, I save it to the database, and now I could add a permission to it. And now last thing I want to do is add a user to a group. There's two ways you go about this. You could add a user to a group or add a group to a user. So I'm going to do the second way. So I have a user that groups. Again, this is a kind of this is an object already existing on the user. I'm going to do an add, and I want to add a group to it. So this group I created, this user is now going to be a part of that group. All right, so that's user 4 here. In our case here, once we create it, we create a permission, we create a group, and then we're going to tie that group to a user. So this, again, this user can be part of multiple groups. If I had a separate group here, I could do another, u.groups.add another group. If I had G2, again, a user can be a part of multiple groups as we discussed before. So in this case, I don't have a second group, so I'm just going to go with one. All right, any questions about creating a new user? Again, highlight here is call the set password method if you're doing it manually. Again, if you do it through the form or through the admin page, when you create a user, that hashing is already done. So it already calls set password for you. You don't have to do anything magical there, right? Because the user types in a clear text password here. They're not writing their hash version of their password, obviously.
Hey, Ankur, I've got another question.
Yeah.
So that that runner, that perms_runner.py is just a seed file. Is that correct?
Yep. It's just gonna be something I'm running through the shell. I could alternatively just run the shell and type in all these commands myself, but I'm more comfortable using like a file for that and then feeding that into the shell.
Okay. Would the syntax kind of be the same for like a fixtures directory?
Yeah, you could create a fixtures and create permissions and groups that way. That's probably a better way to do it if you want to test repeatedly. But yeah, you can do this via fixtures also. So those are the 4 methods we talked about on Monday, right? You can do it through the shell, which I'm doing right now. You can do it through fixtures, which is the Django way to kind of seed a database. You can do it through the admin panel, which we sort of showed. And then you also do it from the user perspective, where you give the user an interface to add data to the database. Yep, so those are the 4 ways we can go about it. I'm doing it through the shell. So I'm going to do python manage.py shell and then feed in my file. So my file is called perms.runner.py. Hopefully there's no errors here. So let me give that a run. All right, nothing got outputted, which means luckily there was no errors here. But if we look at this now, our users should be part of this group. So if I go to, let's go to my admin panel. Let's go to groups. Notice I have a group called editors in it. So that's the group I created. Let's go click on editors. Notice that there's a whole bunch of items here. These are default permissions that Django creates. So there's one I created, chosen permissions, my edit perm. That's the permission I manually created. We'll go to users, user 4. Let's see. Notice that user 4 is part of the editors group. If I went to another user, so let's go back, let's go to user 1. Notice that user 1 is not part of any groups because I've not added user 1 to a group, but user 4 is a part of group. So user 4, again, the admin panel is kind of handy to kind of show all this information, but yep, editors is one of the groups that user 4 is a part of. All right, so user 4 is part of this group. And then if I look at that group editors, that has my edit perm. So anyone that's a member of the editors group has this permission called my edit perm, which is a custom permission I created.
When you created this permission, have you signed on as anything, or were you just a random programmer running a program?
This is a developer side, so I just created some data for my database. Again, I could do this through the admin panel, or I guess not through my admin panel. I could, write a fixtures file to create this permission. It's just simply a flag or like some permission that I created that exists in my database that is tied to a group. Right now, this permission is not doing anything. There's nothing special about this permission or nothing that's changed in our website functionality. But now that we have this permission and these groups that we can kind of investigate, we could do some custom behavior. So to do that, let me go back to my views. And let's say, all right, so I created this edit permission such that in my mind, I wanted some users the ability to access this edit page, but other users should only be able to get to the view page and everyone can get to the home page, right? Because my home page has no login requirements. So anyone logged in or logged out can get to my home page. Anyone that's logged in can get to my view page and my edit page right now, but I want to kind of restrict that. So one way to do that would be, let's see if I remember this. So you can check this request object has a user tied to it. So I do something like if request.user prints request.user.username. So this user object is something that already exists on your request, and that'll be tied to authenticate. Right. So if you're logged in, we want to print the username. So let's actually see that in action. Let's go to where do I go? I want to log in. That's not a valid path. That's auth/login. All right, let's log in as user 4 since we just created user 4. User 4 password is that. Okay, so we logged in as user 4. Let's go to our edit page. So I'm going to go my site/edit. All right, I'm on my edit page. Let's look at our console here. Notice I printed out user 4. That's coming from this line here. So this request that user is the object that's kind of automatically populated for us. It's not something we need to manage. Django manages it for us. All right, so we just printed out the username, which is user 4 down here. But given that we have access to that user, we can investigate things like if I do use our requests, let's see if they're logged in. If requests, sorry, I'm having trouble typing, request.user.hasPerm. This is a function that exists on a user, and you can investigate if they have specific permissions. So in this case, my permission was my edit perm. I might need to double check this because I do this wrong often. Let's say user I just want to check if I can investigate if this particular permission exists on the user. I might need to read documentation for this, but okay, let's see what happens. So basically I'm calling hasPerm on the user. This is a function that's built in to the user model. Let's see what happens here. I might need to specify some other information, but let's give this a try. So I'm going to refresh here. All right, it says user does not have the perm. So it looks like I did something incorrectly. So I need to prepend the login. Yeah. This might not work either. Okay, so read documentation now. So Django user perm as perm, for example. Okay, so documentation, let's see what they have for us. So we talked about the user model. We have username, password, email, yada, yada. We want to do authentication users. So that's something we did already, where we were able to check if we're logged in or not. Here, we want to talk about permissions and authorization. So we talked about adding users to a group, but we want to check hasPerm. So hasPerm, assuming you have an application with app label, foo, and a model named bar. So foo is the app label. But the model is defined outside. Models defined. Okay, app label, I might not need that. Let's see an example of hasPerm. Perm. Okay, so you get the user, you call hasPerm, change blog post. Okay, I'm not sure what I've done wrong here. So I want to check a permission of my edit perm. That perm is what I created here. Why don't I have access to it? All right, let's test with this. So I'm going to go back to my runner. Let's get rid of all these items. So I want to get the user, u equal user dot objects dot get username equals 4. And let's see, user 4. Is that something I have access to? Let's see. All right, so I want to go back to my terminal, run my thing there. All right, so there's no permissions here. That's not good. Turn off the user. Okay.
Didn't you verify it had permissions using the admin console?
Yeah, yeah, it does have the group, but I'm trying to figure out how I can actually access that. So I'm in trouble with that. Yeah, so
Maybe has perm only works for the default permissions and there's a different one for the custom permissions?
it's a good thought. I don't think that's true, but we'll need to try looking things out. So member of the editors group, if you look at the editors group, has my edit perm. So it's off user. How do I actually get that? So user has perm. I think my trouble is accessing the perm here. So if I do like auth, I call it my edit perm. That work? Okay, there we go. So my problem was I wasn't accessing it from the correct, I guess, app or correct location. So this permission was stored under auth. So auth my edit perm is true if I try some made up perm. So user has perm my made up perm. So the first one exists, that should be true. The second one is false, should be false. If I run my runner file here, let me get more space. Okay, so if I run this, notice I get true because this user does have my edit perm that's associated with the group that this user is a member of. With my made up perm, this user doesn't have the permission because that group, all the groups that this user is a member of does not have my made up perm attached to those groups. All right, so now that I have off my edit perm, sorry for forgetting about that here. So I need to add off my edit perm. We should get a printout of user has this perm. So let's check that out. That's not what I wanted to run. I wanted to run my web page. So I refresh this page and look at my output here. I got user has this perm. All right, so again, we can investigate the user before we actually run to the page so that if the user doesn't have perms, we could do something different. Like, let's say in the else case, we want to do user does not have perm as a console output. We'll do return HTTP response. You do not have permission to view this page. All right, so if the user does not have permissions, appropriate permissions, they should not be able to get to the edit page because that is what I'm trying to protect here with permission. So if I save this, let's actually refresh. Notice that we have access to the edit page, nothing special happened. That's because we're logged in as admin, which I think by default has all the permissions. Let's go to login, off login. All right, I'm gonna log in as user 1. User 1 should not have permission to view the edit page. So if I go log in here, Oscar 1 yay. All right, homepage. Everyone should have access to the homepage. View page should only be for people who are logged in. You have access to that because you're logged in as user 1. Let's try to get to the edit page as user 1. So go to edit. Notice I get an error. I say, the error we're showing, you do not have permission to view this page. That's because we actually checked before rendering the edit page, we actually checked the user if they're authenticated and they do not have the permission. We hit this case down here. So that user does not have this my edit perm, so that we decided not to show the edit page to them because we want to protect that only for appropriate users. But if I go to the login page again, off login. All right, let's log in as user 4. User 4 should have access to that edit page. So go to Oscar 4, yay. All right, homepage, we're good. Everyone can view the homepage. Let's go to the edit page. Notice we actually get to the edit page here. That's because user 4 has that permission that we set up. So this is, again, this is authorization. So we authenticated, we're able to log in and log out, but each user may or may not have different levels of access to our website. That's kind of how you control it via permissioning, the way we did it here. There's I guess, a quicker way to do this. So we use this login required decorator. There's also another decorator called permission required.
Oh snap, I called it.
What was that?
I called it.
Called, oh, this permission required thing?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So there, again, there's an easier way that Django kind of does stuff that's pretty common. Permission required is another decorator you can use. So if I add that to my edit something, permission required, I got to pass in the permission. So in this case, it's off my edit. Now let me get rid of this logic here. Let's see if it works the same. So I'm going to save this. Hopefully my server is good. All right, I think my server should be good with that. Let me just restart my server just for good measure. Clear. All right, run my server again. Okay, cool. So we should have been logged out, I think. Nope, we're still logged in. Off, log out. Okay, we're logged out. Let's try to do those things again. So my site, everyone has access to the homepage. So you don't need to be logged in. Notice we're not logged in. View page, you do need to be logged in. And that's because of the login required. So we were not able to get to our login page or view page because of our decorator here, login required. All right, so if we actually log in, let's go with user 4, password Oscar 4, yay. All right, now that we're logged in, we have access to the view page. User 4 also has access to the edit page. Let's go to the edit page. Boom, nothing special here. We have access to the edit page. But if I try it with user 1, so let's log out, or we should create a logout button. That'd be much more useful, like probably nest a logout button. But for now, I'll do it this way. So, all right, I'm logged out now. Let's go back to login. That's auth/login. All right, user 1, and password is Oscar1, yay. All right, we're at the home page. Notice we're logged in as user 1. We still should have access to the view page because the view page is accessible by all logged in users. Yep, got to the view page. Let's try to go to the edit page. Notice we got tossed back to the login page. That's because permission required basically protected us there. Since that evaluates to false, I guess the default behavior is to say, hey, log in with an appropriate user. If we want to redirect somewhere else, I think that is possible. Let me quickly Google that. So Django permission required decorator. Do we have customization for that? All right, permission required decorator. Again, redocumentation, always your friend. You could check a permission. I guess you could control a login page. So anything else we could say? You could raise an exception. Yeah, I guess the quick way would be to just hard code a login URL. So maybe they're taken to the home page instead if they're not permissioned, or maybe an error page. So let's create an error page.
Yeah, like a specialized login page. Like, hey, you tried to access this thing, you don't have permissions for it. Go,
yeah, so let me
get back.
Yeah, let me just create an error page quickly. Probably overkill, but I'm gonna create a new route. Let's just say, let's call this error. The main thing is error here. So views that error will just be a generic error page that says, hey, you tried to do something that you aren't supposed to do. So let's do that here, def error request. And this is going to be, I'm going to be lazy here and just return HTTP request. So HTTP response, say you do not have permissions to view this page.
You want to retype request.
Thank you. Yeah, in that case, I can name that where I want, but yeah, I do want to name that appropriately. So request, thank you for catching that typo. All right, so in this case, we'll reroute to error. If I go back to my views here, I was at my views. So app login error, that is the route I just created. So /error is what we'll be navigate to. So if I try this again, let's log in with user 1, Oscar 1. Okay. Oof. App login is not registering namespace. That's because it's login app. App login doesn't make sense. Login app is the name of my app. All right, let's try that again. Refresh. Good. Oops, that's not good. Off login. User one. Password is password. I guess I'm already logged in as user one, as I see above. All right, we're at the home page. Cool. Let's go to the view page. All right, we're at the view page. User one should not be able to get to the edit page. So I try to go to edit. Notice I'm redirected to my site /error, and I get this error page. I think that's a bit of a hack because they're expecting a login page here. So maybe we want to do a redirect. I think that's possible. But I'm not sure how that's possible with permission required. So if we did it this way, we should be able to redirect to a different page. There's a redirect command. I think redirect. Yep. So if you include a redirect from Django shortcuts, you should be able to do it here. So if I did this the manual way, have a bit more control of where I get to. So let's return. It's login app /error. Get rid of my decorator. So I want to do this manually. Let's see if that works. Let's go to view. All right, so let you log in as user one. Let's go to edit. Okay, notice we got redirected to the error page. This is manually handling it rather than using the decorator. So that gives us a little more control of how we handle it. All right, so that's a brief dive into authorization. There's a lot more to it, and that's going to be up to you guys if you want to read more about it. Django documentation, different ways to kind of assign groups and permissions and do a whole bunch of stuff. But for now, hopefully that was a good enough introduction into, again, creating permissions. Let me uncomment all this stuff so we can look at it one more time. All right, so again, you can create users. Just remember to use the set password function instead of assigning the password directly, else your password will not actually be set correctly in the database. You can create permissions. Again, give it a name, human readable name, code name for what you use within your application code. Create a group. Again, this is the common way to do it, where you create groups, assign permissions to groups and users to groups so that your group's kind of the middleman. That's the recommended way of doing it. But again, there's nothing stopping you from doing something like user.permissions.add a permission. You can assign a permission directly to a user. That's just fine. The way you're doing it with a group, you can do it to a user if you want to. There's nothing stopping you. It's just proper design. Use groups for the most part, unless you need like a special one-off case where one particular user might need a really super special permission. Then there might be a use case for adding permission directly to that user. All right, we're approaching lunchtime here. What questions do you guys have about authentication or authorization or anything that we covered this morning?
Is authentication going to be a part of the assessment this Friday?
Great question. I would need to double check, but for now, I believe no. I think it's a bonus, as in if you do add authentication, that'll be a bonus point or whatever for your assessment. Let me actually stop the recording here.